Hi, everybody, and welcome to Sewing Thursday. I am, of course, T, and whether you know me from my sewing blog, Sewing by T, my fabric shop, Simply by T, or you are simply a fabric lover just like myself, you are going to have a great 15 minutes. So today I am talking about buttonholes, which so many people struggle with. So I'm going to give you my favorite tips and tricks. I have got my bias tape maker machine. I've taken it for a spin and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. And then just a recap of what fabrics we have coming in. Oh, hi, Karen. You know what, Karen? I look like I'm feeling better because I figured out the trick to making sure that my makeup looks really good. So I normally do the makeup that I wear every day, which is fabulous for every day, but from the harsh lights and the camera, I needed to go way darker. So I went way darker and I look like I'm feeling great, even though I feel exactly the same way I felt last week. So that is marvelous, but thank you for noticing, Karen. So as people are hopping on, make sure you hop on and say hi, because we want to know that you're here. Even if you're not watching us live, it makes a difference, and we like to go back and double check and make sure we're answering people's questions. So if you have a question, definitely feel free to write it in, even if we're not live. So I'm going to go ahead and get started because I'm hoping that I'm not going to go overtime this week, and it's just going to be 15 minutes and I'm going to be done. So up first, this is my Christmas present. It is a automatic bias tape maker. And so I want to give you a little backstory about this because I've wanted one of these forever. And I found one on eBay once and it was $75. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And then guess what? Somebody else bought it, of course, because it was $75. So I did not pay $75 for mine. They don't make these anymore. So you can't just go to the store and buy one. So I completely regret it. eBay. eBay is where you can find one, but be prepared to pay. It's kind of painful at this point. I've been watching eBay a long time to get this bias tape maker. A long time. I think it's been almost 3 years now. And I finally said, okay, I'm just going to pay for it and just accept it the way it is. So let's go ahead and talk about it. I did play with it a little bit yesterday. I did not do as much as I would have wanted to. So this is actually the fabulous box that they come in. It's actually not that heavy. You can see I can hold it with one hand. And it's really pretty compact. Here, get it open. And all the parts fit inside the box. You got the cord and some other pieces. So I will admit that I love bias tape. It's so pretty and it makes me happy. Karen, you're asking how much yours is worth. I'm going to guess that if you're patient on eBay, you can probably get at least $200, maybe more. So if you took good care of it, especially if you have extra attachments, then girl, you are in the market to get something fancy if you're not loving your bias tape maker. So I did play with it yesterday, like I said, and I want to say I'm not super impressed. So let me say that I only tried it one time. And one time does not make like a super life-changing experience. But I played with it. I feel like it could be hotter to really make nice creases. That said, I cannot go to the store and compare and determine whether my bias tape maker is a dud, because that happens, sometimes you get one that's not that great. It did do the job that it's supposed to do. And honestly, if it just did the job that it's supposed to do, and all I have to do is go back over everything really quickly with an iron, it is worth it because I'm tired of burning the tips of my fingers. I always burn the tips of my fingers when I'm making bias tape. No matter how careful I am, I burn the tips of my fingers. And then I say words that my kids shouldn't hear, and they go, Mom, are you okay? Or they go, Mom, did you just say blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, no, I didn't. Go away, kid. So would I, if I didn't love bias tape, buy one of these? Probably not. Oh, so Karen, you're saying it takes a while to heat up. How long is a while? Because my little green light did turn on. Should I have been leaving it longer? Because if that is the deciding factor, oh my God, I love this thing. You know, I felt like it should have been making a little bit firmer, more precise creases. So if I just have to wait a little longer, I'm going to wait a little longer and love this thing because I love bias tape. It's so pretty. And honestly, I have a drawer full of bias tape that I almost never use. It's just a drawer full of pretty bias tape. And sometimes I open the drawer and take out my bias tape and I put them in little stacks and I go, oh, they're so pretty. And then I put them back in the drawer. So, you know, it is what it is. So should you buy one of these? Be prepared that if it breaks, you cannot go to the store and get a replacement. So think very carefully about whether you have money to spend on something else. This was my Christmas present though, so I am not like ungrateful. Yes, Karen, I might have a bias tape fetish. Oh, welcome, Melissa. We're just talking about my bias tape maker and that Karen's telling me that I probably should have let it heat up a little bit longer. And if that's the case, then I have a very favorite new toy because I love bias tape and I can, you know, go through my drawer of scraps now and make tons and tons of bias tape, which I may never use, but I can look at it and see how pretty it is. So if you are just joining us, make sure that you hit like for our video and share with any of your sewing friends, of course. And of course, always when you hop on, say hello because we want to hear from you. So I'm going to go ahead and start talking about buttonholes. And I know a lot of people struggle with buttonholes. So generally, I see two mistakes with buttonholes. So let's see. And I made sample buttonholes. Interfacing, no interfacing. So let's talk about how important interfacing is. So if you look at this button here, you can see how it's distorted and it kind of pulls itself and creates a fabulous little wavy line. Yeah, we don't want our buttons to have wavy lines. Buttonholes need to sit flush and even. You can also tell where the fabric started to distort. So you can see how it's tight in these corners. And this buttonhole section is actually now longer than the rest of the fabric. Now this is French terry. So French terry is fairly stable, but it can't make a buttonhole without help. So what kind of help do you need? You have options. You have so many options. So this is just regular, probably a mid-weight interfacing. And there are lots of different kinds of interfacing. You can buy fusible interfacing. You can buy really, really heavyweight interfacing. Usually the really heavyweight interfacing is intended for stabilizing a bag, not so much for stabilizing a button. That said, in a pinch, no one's going to see your stabilizer. So if that's the stabilizer you have, then go for it because nobody's going to see it. So this is just a regular mid-weight stabilizer, not fusible. You'll notice it doesn't tear. It's not amazing. It's just stabilizer. But everybody should have stabilizer in their sewing stash. I usually buy it by the bolt when Joann's has those big bolt sales. Hi, Kathy. Thank you for joining us. So we are talking about stabilizer. And as I was saying, I buy this by the bolt. I buy it by the bolt because it's way cheaper. And the reality is, I think I bought my bolt 5 years ago. And when you're stabilizing a button, you need like a 2-inch square. So how many 2-inch squares do I have here? This is not a roll. This is like a yard. So you need stabilizer for good buttons. I cannot say that enough times. You have to have stabilizer to make a good button. I've seen people try to make buttonholes on quilting cotton without stabilizer. Well, you see these corners, especially this one right here. You can see where it has started to pull. And so all of this is distorted. And if I can, let's see if I can get this in close enough for you. If you look really, really close, there we go. You can see how the fabric started getting pulled up into the stitches. Now, when that fabric pulls up into the stitches, it distorts your buttonhole. And that's why we have this crease right here, this crease on this side. It's, you know, it's functional. This will make a functional buttonhole, but it's not going to last very long, and it makes your garments look homemade. We don't want our garments to look homemade. They need to look handcrafted. So the solution is stabilizer, and you're going to see this, and it's so easy, but it makes such a huge difference. So this is French terry, and it's just a single layer of interfacing. And if you look, there is no distortion in the corners. And I didn't change any settings on my machine. Everything was exactly the same for all 4 buttonholes. And you'll see there's no distortion. The fabric wasn't getting eaten, so you can see how it doesn't raise up my stitches. It actually compresses it a little bit, which is actually what you want in a buttonhole. And so that's on French terry, very basic interfacing. And then here's the one on quilting cotton. So you look, there's no more distortion in the corners. I should have ironed this piece before I turned it into a buttonhole, but so that's what this crease right here is. It's me not ironing. But you can see how the fabric, yeah, let's see if I can get it just right. Sorry, it's hard to figure out which way. There we go. So you can see how the fabric is no longer getting pulled up into those stitches. And that is the difference between a good buttonhole and a bad buttonhole. Bad buttonholes distort. We don't want distorted buttonholes. Now, there's one more trick. And Anna's asking what kind of interfacing. So I actually have lots of different kinds of interfacing. I have fusible interfacings, and I just have regular interfacing. For what I normally do for garment sewing, I use a mid-weight interfacing. And for the most part, it works great on buttonholes and collars, shirt stands, that sort of thing. It's not fancy, but you have options. So let's say that you need to interface a buttonhole, but you don't want to leave the interfacing in. You have the option of using a wash away interfacing. And normally wash away interfacing is for embroidery, and that's where I learned about wash away interfacing. But the key is that you can then put a layer on top, a layer underneath, add your buttonhole, wash out the interfacing, and it's just water that'll make it just disappear, and you will still have a nice crisp buttonhole without having the interfacing in the background. And normally that's something where, let's say you're working on like a silk shirt and you're doing the button placket, but you don't want it to show, because interfacing is obviously going to show through on something really lightweight like silk. So you can use a wash away, and that way it's not going to show, but you still get the nice stability. So the last thing I want to show people, because buttonholes is usually the last thing you do, right? And how tragic would it be that you just finished this buttonhole, and then when you go to cut it out, you rip it. And you rip a hole into your fabric, and now your buttonhole is ruined, and the garment is ruined, and everything is ruined, and you just want to cry. Let's pretend like I've never had that life experience, right? So this is like the easiest trick. I think I saw it on Craftsy. Maybe I saw it before that. Maybe I read it in a book. I don't know. But you will need one pin, your buttonhole, and a seam ripper, okay? This will guarantee that you absolutely cannot rip a hole into your buttonhole. So how do you do it? You're going to put your pin along one side. Let's make sure you can see that. You can see how I stopped away from that edge. You are now going to cut your buttonhole from this side all the way over until you hit the pin. That pin is going to stop you from cutting across to the other side. So let me show you how easy this is. I'll just pop this in here. All right, so I've cut it all the way across, and that pin stopped me from ending up on the other side. To finish it, you pull that pin out, turn it around, poke your seam ripper in, whoops, and cut that tiny little section that's left. Boom, perfect buttonhole, no ripping through to the other side. There is one last tip that I have for this, and I forgot to grab it, but use either super glue like I do, which is, you know, the poor man's way of doing it, or what is it called? Oh my goodness, the glue that you use. Oh my guys, help me out. I can't remember. I talked about it last week. It's the little blue bottle. I can see letters on it, but I cannot remember the name of the product. But anyway, it's a sewing glue. And before you cut your buttonhole out, make sure that you put just a tiny little strip right in, fray check. Yes, fray check. Fray check is what I'm talking about. So just run a bead of fray check across your buttonhole before you cut it, and it will never unfray. So you can see right here already that, whoops, that my buttonhole is all like frayed and yucky. If I'd put fray check on there, this would not happen. Oh my God, Caroline. Okay, so Caroline is checking out my nails, and I have to tell you, my nails don't kill people, and I've never hurt myself with them. I am very lucky, and just genetically, I inherited really, really good nails from my dad. So they are like super strong. I can do all kinds of things. These are like, they could be a weapon. And normally I have them all like fancied up with Jamberry, but I don't right now. And I really only cut them if they break or I get annoyed because one of them scratches me. So that is what it is. Thank you, Caroline, for taking this completely outside of sewing. So even though I tried not to, I totally went over time. I just want to recap for you guys. The fabrics that are hitting the shop should be here tomorrow. However, Christmas is crazy, and I cannot guarantee shipping, and they haven't called to confirm that tomorrow they're bringing my fabric, but they better bring my fabric because I have plans for this weekend to sew this fabric. So we have coming to the shop our glitter French terry, which is so sparkly and awesome, and I love it. And I believe we have 5 colors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 colors. So we got the gray, the navy, olive, and the navy is much darker in person than it's showing here. The rose that you already saw, black, and white. Now, the last time I checked inventory, we're down to the last 30 yards of these. And I have already removed my personal 10 yards that I'd like to keep of these. However, fabric doesn't always arrive perfect, and any damaged fabric gets pulled out of my 10 yards. So if you really want this glitter French terry, you need to grab it now. So that's the only warning you're going to have on that. We also have coming to the shop our baby French terry. This one is in 6 colors, but I don't have them all here. This is super soft and just amazing drape. And I have so many shirt plans for this because it makes an amazing actual cowl. It would be fabulous as this Patterns for Pirates. It has that crossover cowl or crossover hood. So it's like a cowl and a hood, and the drape like of this is fabulous, and it's going to be comparable. And then finally, we have our jegging. Now, as you can see, I've already been cutting pieces off, doing swatch tests and different things with this. And I did run a hot wash today. And this is my tiny little piece that I dug out of my dryer. So I cut a 4-inch square, and after I washed it, this is a 4-inch square. So I am not promising 0 shrinkage because that isn't practical, but I am telling you that my trip through the hot dryer, and I'm talking hot because I washed it with the kitchen towels because that was the next load. And aside from like rolling like crazy, because that's what knits do, there was no shrinkage. So, you know, if anything, I might have lost an 1/8 inch on the length, but that's going to translate to like very small amounts. And I'm going to guess that's because this has poly in it. So fabulous, fabulous fabric. I can't wait to get this in the shop. I've got so many plans for pants. Okay, so did anybody bring any other questions or ideas or things they were thinking about? I do have the list from the group of different tools that people were wanting me to talk about, and I do have them in my Amazon cart right now, and I'll probably start bringing those into the shop so I can take a look at them and see which ones I like and see which ones I don't. I also spent some time yesterday looking at feet for my cover stitch machine, which, you know, I'd probably like my cover stitch machine more if I had some of the other feet. So I'll probably be getting some of those too to talk about. And yeah, I think that is it. We obviously went over time again, even though I meant to only spend 15 minutes. If you have questions about the fabric that is coming into the shop, shoot me an email. I'll be happy to answer it. And otherwise, thank you for joining me, and I will see you next week.